What did I learn on the shakedown hike? I learned a lot. And just like the first one and the second one, this is the third, I learned a lot. This was a winter shakedown hike, so I learned about the difference in weather and did I prepare properly for that. And for the most part, I did. There were a few things that I learned I need to change. And one of those is, while I love the gloves that I have, they are not appropriate gloves for 20-degree weather with 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts. They're just not. I'm going to have to do some research to find some gloves that are going to meet that need. I learned that I'm just not a big fan of hiker food. I'm just, fruits and vegetables are my jam, and adapting to hiker food is going to be a challenge for me. And so as many combinations as you can come up with, there might be a day or two that are interesting and acceptable, but the rest of the time it's just like, I found it interesting that I didn't even want to eat. I wasn't hungry on this trip. I had to force myself. And the reason I did that is because when you have temperatures as low as what I experienced here and you are not hungry, you must eat before you go to bed. And if you can eat a warm meal, that is the best. And the reason why is because, first of all, you need the nourishment, and second of all, because when your belly is full, it is generating, it is working to digest that food, and it is helping to keep your body warm. And so you just must do it, and I forced myself to do it for that reason only. What did I learn about my sleep system? Well, my air mattress is awesome. I wouldn't change a thing about it. I have that Nemo Tensor air mattress. It was great. I have that Sea to Summit sleeping bag liner. It's exceptional, and for two reasons. One is summer and one is winter. In the summer, you can just use that to sleep in, and plus it is so long that you can actually cover up your head if you're sleeping in a shelter, and you're not going to get mosquito bites on your face while you're sleeping, or bug bites. It also keeps the mice from running straight over your face because they're going over the sleeping bag liner. In the winter months, you can also pull it over your head, and it really, because of the warmth of your breath, it really warms up your environment, and it takes the cold out. That's a detriment in the summer because it is so hot. You've got all that warmth coming off of your breath, but compared to mosquito bites and mice running over your head, if you're staying in a shelter, I can live with the additional warmth inside of that sleeping bag liner. So let's talk about my Enlightened Equipment quilt. The quilt is awesome. I have a 0-degree quilt. Some people sleep warmer, some sleep colder. On a 20-degree night with very heavy wind gusts, I found that a 0-degree bag, even with my sleeping bag liner and wearing 5 layers of clothes to bed with 2 pairs of socks, was not enough. My system needs to be recalibrated, and that's okay. That's what these shakedown hikes are for, to learn what works well, what needs to be realigned. I learned I absolutely love my hiking poles. I have the Women's Ergo Trail cork handled black diamond hiking poles, and they are phenomenal. I wouldn't trade them out for anything. Even if somebody gave me another set, I wouldn't want them. I really like what I have. How did my Ultra Trail shoes work? My Lone Peaks. They were perfect. They were absolutely perfect. I was very happy with them, and because they had gotten damp while I was hiking, I actually put them in the toe box of my quilt for them to kind of warm up from the heat generated from my feet while I was sleeping. And there were two benefits to that. They were dry the next morning, which was great, but they were also toasty when I put them on instead of being freezing cold. So that was an awesome way to take care of that. They were awesome. Those in combination with tying the laces right, which I've talked about in another video, wearing my Injinji toe socks and using my foot glide, I did not get one blister, not one, the entire trip. Not even a hot spot, nothing. My feet did very, very well in those shoes. Oh, and also having the, inserts for my shoes that I previously talked about. The Dr. Scholl's plantar fasciitis insoles for women, they worked great. And they're so much less expensive than purchasing Superfeet. Superfeet is a great product. I have Superfeet insoles in some other shoes that I've got, but I was trying to find a product that I could use that might work just as well and be much less expensive, and I did find it for me, and they worked perfectly. I learned that my Anchor recharging, or my charging block, it's a 20,000 milliamp block. Great. It was great. It charged my watch, my telephone, my iPod, and my Pale Blue Earth batteries every night for 4 nights, and it never ran out of power. It charged all of those things. I felt that it was an exceptional product for me to have. I'm very glad that I did the research and chose that product. My Pale Blue Earth batteries, those things, they're the bee's knees. They are just the bee's knees. So if you are used to Duracell batteries, I can't speak for any other brand because that's the brand that we always purchased in the past. They last a little bit longer. I'm glad for the opportunity to own a set of these batteries, actually 2 sets of these batteries. Pale Blue Earth batteries are a more sustainable product, a more earth, environmentally friendly product. Economically, while the upfront cost is a little expensive, if you add up the cost of batteries that you use along the way, Pale Blue Earth batteries pay off over and over and over again. When using your batteries in your headlamp on the high setting, not the secondary setting or the red, light setting, on the high setting, they last for 3 hours before having to be recharged. You really have to think about having an extra set of those batteries charged and ready in your side pouch before you go on a night hike. The thing about these batteries is, with Duracell batteries, they kind of start to dim a little bit as they're losing their charge. Pale Blue Earth batteries are not like that. It's bright, 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 and then they're gone. They're just gone. There's no dimming. There's no warning. They're just gone. If you're going to be night hiking, you need to be thinking about having that extra set right there ready. Put a new set of batteries in there if your night hiking is going to be more than 3 hours long and you're using the high setting. If you're using a different setting, they last longer. I haven't used them and tested them that way to see how long they last because I need the high setting. I was very satisfied with this product, and I think that you would be too if you gave them a try. My stove system was great. My Pocket Rocket 2 and Deluxe system that comes with the pot, the whole system worked great. Those pack towels I talked to you about, nose drool is real, people. It is real when you are hiking and it is cold. And I mean faucets of nose drool. So to have that pack towel attached to my backpack where it was a cape flying in the wind as I was hiking, but I could flip that thing around and take care of my nose and my eyes watering was great. And those things are so soft. You know how when you get a cold and you blow your nose and blow your nose and blow your nose and the inside of your nose gets pretty raw? None of that. That pack towel is soft, so I cannot recommend that product more. Additionally, for my Anchor battery block, just know that that battery block does not come with the charging cable or with the charger that goes into the wall. It is just the battery block. Well, I say this because you need to make sure that you buy a fast charging cable and a fast charging charger. Not a regular charger, not a regular cable. This is the Anchor power block that I purchased. It comes with this little mesh bag, and this is the 20,000 milliamp. It also has a USB-C and a USB connector. Make sure that if you're going to buy one of these that you get one with both connecting sources. And this will tell you how charged it is. It has 4 little blue lights, and as it's going down, each light will dissipate. This is fully charged since I've returned. This is the Anchor plug that I purchased. This is a fast charging plug, and it goes down. Also, on my cables, I mark my cables with a Sharpie so I can know which cable goes to what. This is for my phone, but this also works for another product that I bring with me. This is a fast charging cable as well. I saved this bag from the Nemo Hornet 2 tent that I had, the footprint, and I wondered, what am I ever going to use this bag for? But it works really well because I put the and all of the cables inside, and it's all in one place. One of the things I wanted to share with you that I found fascinating, if you choose to start from Amicalola Falls to Springer, or whether you start at Springer and go to Hawk Mountain Shelter, you're going to run into this. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is. The military do maneuvers out here in this AT area all year. And they have their Jeeps, they have night maneuvers, and they have live machine gun fire at night. And they are with blank rounds, which are right here. And but it's a little startling whenever you hear a long trajectory of machine gun fire in the middle of the night and it wakes you up. So if you're not aware of that, I wanted to make sure that you knew that that happened in this area. Once you get past Hawk Mountain Shelter, you really don't hear this anymore, but you will occasionally find these shells on the ground, or you will find MRE packages on the ground where they have left their trash, and they are not supposed to do that. They get in trouble for doing that. But I did see this on my July hike in this area, and now on my winter hike. Just be aware. So let's talk about camp shoes. I personally have these Crocs, and I love them. Now, when you are hiking, you are going to run into hikers that like to share their thoughts on camp shoes, 1, and 2, on Crocs, that they are too heavy. And I always thank them and wish them well for the information that they've shared. Sometimes I marvel at the ridicule that I have received for carrying a pair of Crocs on my backpack. These shoes weigh a pound. You have to consider that weight when you are trying to cut ounces. For me, they work perfectly. The question is whether or not you feel like camp shoes are necessary. For me, I think that they are. At the end of the day, I want to take off my trail shoes. I want to be able to put something else on. Now, you can get a pair of Croc-like shoes from Walmart or maybe Target that weigh less than this, and they're less expensive if you're interested in a Croc type shoe. Camp shoes for me are not just for camp, they are also for when I come into town and I don't want to be wearing my trail shoes. Perhaps I even want to wash my trail shoes because the bacteria and germs that are, the growth that is going on inside them. When I am staying in a hostel, I actually wear them when taking a shower. I don't want everybody else's body funk splashing up onto my feet. I realize some of that is going to occur anyway, but it's just mentally, for me, it's a mind game. It makes me feel better to have them on in the shower, and they are useful. Staying in shelters instead of using your tent. I did not use a tent while on this hike. I stayed in shelters only, and I had not planned on doing that. My tent was with me. I could have used it. However, it was so windy that I felt like having 3 walls around me was a better choice. And actually, the storms and the winds that came through were so severe that tree branches kept falling off and hitting, actually exploding onto the roof of the shelters, and that made me feel better about my choice of not using a tent, because those could have fallen onto my tent, and maybe not, but they could have, and I felt like under those weather conditions that was a better choice. Now, staying in a shelter was interesting for a couple of different reasons, and one is mice. You know, you would think that when it's 20 degrees at night that what living creature would want to come out and play in the middle of the night? But you know, mice do. They do, and they are extremely active, and they're nocturnal. They really like coming out at night. In the Hawk Mountain shelter, there was a nest upstairs that had 5 or 6 mice that were living in it, and I just didn't have the heart to go up there and get their nest and destroy it. I couldn't do it. You know, they are trying to survive. It's actually their shelter, not mine. And you know, those shelters are their way of keeping warm and surviving. I couldn't do it. I'm just too tender-hearted. The mice were rampant. They actually ran over the tops of the sleeping bags, and I had to kind of all night long with my hand on the floor to keep them away from me. I had that sleeping bag liner pulled up over my head so they couldn't get into, you know, where I was sleeping by skittering in there. However, I can tell you, you can hear them. I must have supersonic hearing, because I could hear their feet moving across the boards. Even on the other side of the shelter, I could hear it. I might not be able to see the best, but I can hear Hawk Mountain shelter. I arrived, and there were 2 other men there that were setting up a hammock sleeping system. And I went ahead and got into the shelter and was setting up my system and everything, and they came and introduced themselves to me. They were delightful. They were very, very nice men. Well, I didn't want to be intrusive, and very gently said, do you all know that it's going to start raining tonight? And they said, no, it's not going to start raining until about 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and we're going to be up and out of here before it starts raining. This is not going to be an issue. And I said, oh, okay. And I just left it at that. But I knew the weather forecast was saying that it was going to start raining at about 11. However, I'm not an expert. What do I know? You know, weather changes all the time, so maybe it wasn't going to start raining until 8 or 9 o'clock the next morning. Well, it started raining at 11:30 that night, and I'm telling you, it was sideways rain. It was pouring. It was like a monsoon. It was windy. It was raining. It was, and all I could think about was them in those hammocks out there outside of the shelter. So glad I had made the choice not to set up a tent, because I could have. It was dry and it was fine, you know, when I got there. But I was glad that I had made the decision to stay in the shelter that night. Although I knew that there would be mice, it was better than the alternative. Well, the next morning, it was very early, and I heard this scream, this yell from a man, one of the men in those hammocks. And he came into the shelter, and he was drenched wet. And I said, are you okay? And he said, I was until a few minutes ago. And I said, well, what happened? The fly, I'm not sure if you call it a fly that goes over a hammock. There's this tarp system that you can put over a hammock. Well, I don't know how they set those things up. I don't know anything about that kind of system, but water had pooled in an area above his head, and when he moved, all the water came in through the outside, you know, flap of the tarp, and completely drenched him. It's really not funny, but drenched him, drenched all of his clothes, drenched his down quilt. He was absolutely soaking wet. Well, the other man, the same thing happened to him. I said, well, it's 6:30 in the morning. What are you going to do? Because it's 100%, rain today. And he said, oh no, it's not 100% rain today. And I said, oh, I said, okay. And I said, but you're drenched. Do you have, where are you going to stay? And he said, well, we're going to go up to Gooch Gap and we're going to stay there. And I said, and are you going to stay in the shelter? And he said, well, we'll have to because everything is wet. And I said, it's going to be 20 degrees tonight and uh, everything is wet. How are you going to sleep? And he said, well, we'll have to figure that out. And I looked at him, and I guess the wife in me just came out and I said, you know, it's going to be really cold tonight and really windy, and it's 100% rain all day long. And, your system is wet. I don't want you to get hypothermia. Let me tell you about a hostel that you can stay in that's near Gooch Gap. And so I gave them the information. They decided that that's what they would do for the evening, but that they were going to hike in those conditions all day that day. And because they felt like it was going to stop raining. Well, I'm here to tell you it did not stop raining. It was 100% rain the entire day and the entire night. The second day that I was there, I stayed in the shelter. So I basically took a 0 the second day. Even though I wasn't in luxury accommodations, but there was no way I was going to hike in those conditions and chance getting hypothermia. I just didn't feel like that was a wise choice for me.